Solve this system of equations, x minus y equals 2, x times y equals 4. We're going to solve this using substitution, and we'll begin by solving the first equation for y. Subtracting x from both sides, we have the opposite of y equals the opposite of x plus 2. And multiplying both sides of the equation by -1, we have y equals x minus 2. We'll take this expression x minus 2 and substitute it for y in the second equation. So instead of x times y equals 4, we will have x times x minus 2 equals 4. And then we will multiply x squared minus 2x equals 4. This is a quadratic equation, so we'll subtract 4 from both sides to get a 0 on one side. X squared minus 2x minus 4 equals 0. Now, if we try to factor this, we find that it does not factor. So we will use the quadratic formula. So let's identify a, b, and c. A is the coefficient of the x squared term, which is 1. B is the coefficient of the x term, which is -2. And then c is -4. The quadratic formula says that x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and we have values for a, b, and c, which we substitute into this formula. So we have x equals the opposite of b, which is -2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, that would be -2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -4, all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. Be real careful in substituting. That can get to be the tricky part. So x equals, the opposite of -2 is 2, plus or minus the square root of -2 squared is 4. 4 times 1 is 4, times -4 is -16, minus -16 is plus 16, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now we can simplify by adding 4 and 16, so we have 2 plus or minus the square root of 20 all over 2. Now let's see if we can simplify further. 20 is 4 times 5. So that equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 5 all over 2. And the square root of 4 is 2, so we can write this as 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 5 all over 2. Now there's a 2 in the denominator. If I can factor a 2 out of the numerator, I can simplify. It's 2 times 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. And at this point, since 2 is a factor of the numerator, I can cancel. 2 over 2 is 1. And so I have that x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. Now this plus or minus we've done as a convenience, but it really represents two answers, 1 plus the square root of 5 and 1 minus the square root of 5. That's two values for x. We now need to find y. So we list the two values for x and we list the relationship. We know that y is x minus 2. So when x is 1 plus the square root of 5, then y is going to be 1 plus the square root of 5 minus 2. 1 minus 2 is -1, so that will be -1 plus the square root of 5. When x is 1 minus the square root of 5, y will be 1 minus the square root of 5 minus 2. That's x minus 2 again, and that will be -1 minus the square root of 5. Now the solution of a system of equations we give as ordered pairs x and y, and here there are two. The first one is 1 plus the square root of 5, -1 plus the square root of 5. That's the x and y values in the first line. And then the second solution is 1 minus the square root of 5, -1 minus the square root of 5. And those are the solutions of the system of equations.